Hi, everyone. Welcome to How to Fight CPS and Win, the New York edition. I'm Stacy Sonletter, and my claim to fame is that I divorced an attorney who used to work for Niagara County CPS in New York. Um, I the divorce action took over 10 years, and so basically any hurdle that could happen in a divorce action and involving CPS occurred to me, and so I bring that experience to you as well. Today was a hearing for one of our infamous attorneys in the area, Nicholas D'Angelo, who also was an attorney for Niagara County CPS. He was initially arraigned on 12 charges of rape, felony charges, and this was in November of 2020, almost 3 years ago. And the case has been going on and on and on without much action until recently. Today, he appeared in court to take a plea deal, and I was able to have a heads up about the court. So I went over today, and I was able to be in attendance. And also in attendance was Mr. Bill Nye, who's joining us now. Bill, would you like to explain to the audience what your attraction to following this case was?
Yeah, Stacy, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Um, what I saw was a travesty of justice, first of all. I know one of the victims of Nicholas D'Angelo, and I know what she's been through. And even though she wasn't part of the three victims that were there in the courtroom today, um, she's been working hard for the last 3 years to bring this guy to justice, and he sort of got a slap on the wrist today.
Yeah, I think I was reading from the original indictment. I can read directly from the court transcript. They were saying that if the defendant were to be convicted on all of these offenses, he would be looking at a maximum sentence of well over 30 years.
Actually, 45 years.
Because they charged him with more things today?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a bit there to take in, but he was so deflated and pleading guilty that now he has to be recognized as this person that was found guilty of rape, and he lost his license to practice in the country, and he's on 10 years. I thought they said sexual probation. Whether it's different, I don't know. But and he does the 6 months in Niagara County Jail, which will probably turn into 4 months. So he got off very light. He got the 6 months because, in taking the 10-year probation, they can only give him a maximum of 6 months.
So it's interesting you say he was acting all woozy and dizzy, like he was going to pass out from admitting to these atrocious crimes for 6 months in jail when he could have had 45 years. And whoa, that was oh so much when he really got hardly a slap on the wrist.
This is going to follow him the rest of his life, and I got a feeling he's going to be revisiting a jail cell because of his compulsion. He's going to try to find ways around the law, and it's just going to be a matter of time.
You would think that this is going to follow him,
Yeah.
but you would have thought that it would have followed him when he was about 17 years old when he allegedly sexually abused or even possibly raped a girl in a school hallway, and she was 14. You would think that would have followed him because that's still available in the news and available information to the public. Yet he got hired to be an attorney for Niagara County CPS. So you would think that these things that is public information would follow him and affect him, but it didn't affect him when he got hired for CPS.
He's in deep with the politics of Niagara County. He's actually been participated in Carolyn Watasik's campaign for judge. He's written for the Niagara Reporter. He's done articles for Brian Seaman, who's the district attorney of Niagara County, and he's connected. It's as simple as that. He'll come out. They might disassociate themselves with him because of now he's considered a convicted rapist. Okay,
Or he's going to be everyone's friend and be everyone's fall guy.
it could be. It could be. If it wasn't for Noel, she brought this to light, and she was the voice for the victims, and she fought hard. But I think her satisfaction should be that she was able to watch him say that he was guilty to all these charges.
Yeah, and just so the public knows, Noelle was our scheduled interviewee for today. She is one of D'Angelo's victims, but she was so upset from the minimum accountability here that she went home and is physically sick to her stomach and couldn't participate in this interview. And you know that she would have loved to, because any opportunity to speak up against the situation and bring awareness, she does it. So this plea deal made her physically ill.
Yes, I was with her the whole time and trying to encourage her. It was hard. Um, I think, sitting there with the victims, um, just brought it all back, and she was trying to deal with it, and um, being she wasn't part of the case, she could only do so much and say so much. And another thing, there in the gallery there was the state police who did the investigation, and I can only think that he's got to be so frustrated and upset at the work he put in to get all this evidence and gather it, only to have the district attorney uh, let him plead to a case, plead to a smaller or a lower sentence. And what makes him want to go back to work the next morning, knowing that these people are just walking?
It would feel helpless to me, and
Yeah,
certainly you would hope that his work was diligent, and um, and that this would be very deflating to him, you know.
yeah,
Um, another thing, another aspect of the case that really bothers me, and I think really the media never really covers, and so this is our opportunity here. In the indictment transcript, one of the victims is a troubled underage teen who is 16 years old at the time Mr. D'Angelo allegedly solicited her for sexual relations.
uh,
So the problem that I have is that Mr. D'Angelo had the very sensitive position of being an attorney for Niagara County CPS. And word is the 16-year-old child was in Niagara County DSS custody. I'm not sure at the time of that Mr. D'Angelo was an acting attorney for a CPS at the time this occurred or not. It's very possible. But that would be child sex trafficking under color of law. In the media and the courts represented this child as a underage prostitute. It's very
okay,
5-year-old be a prostitute. 16-year-old
right.
see 1591 child sex 8, 16, or 17, and nowhere was Mr. D'Angelo ever held accountable for child sex trafficking under color of law. That's bothering to me. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's once again, I'm going to say connections, 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 and he shows no remorse. This is the thing that bothered me the most. There was no remorse at all in watching him in court the last month. And he was a little shook today, I found, because the victims were there. He realized what he had done. So he was shaking a little bit today.
Yeah, he was definitely woozy.
Yeah, he was. He was. And he wouldn't look around. He stayed focused on just the judge, and he had to lean over to his attorneys. And what should I say? Yes or no? Here's a guy who's in court all the time.
Yeah.
And doesn't know how to answer.
What do you think about the fact that this took 3 years for any adjudication on it?
It just tells me that it allowed him to make enough money to pay his attorneys, talk to people, coerce people. I would get emails from him. He doesn't even know me. And my family would get emails from him. They weren't threatening, but he just wanted to make sure that he knew the connection with me, supporting Noel and the victims.
So just people might be wondering what exactly he was charged with today. So Aaron Bessaker from the Buffalo News, he was there dutifully in reporting, and already his report is out to the public. And he summarizes that D'Angelo pleaded guilty before State Supreme Court Justice Deborah Gibbons to 4 counts of first-degree sexual abuse, Class D felonies, 2 counts of third-degree criminal sexual act, and 2 counts of third-degree rape, Class E felonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Noelle, who we were going to interview today, isn't one of these victims. She's yet another one.
Yes. She's another one. And from what I'm gathering is any cases that were being investigated cannot move forward. That was part of the plea. However, it seems to me the charges he was charged with a month ago on tampering, fraud, campaign fraud, isn't a part of this. So, although it did have something to do with the district attorney. Okay, so those charges should still be standing. So my thought is, okay, he's going to be in court again for this. What's going to happen when you put the two together? There's 2 more felonies. I don't believe they said they were lifting those charges.
Right, I would think that they're not related.
Right.
So can you explain to the listeners exactly what happened with his campaign fraud there and what we think the motive was?
I think he wanted to taint the district attorney's office. He wanted to send a campaign contribution from the district attorney's assistant district attorney's husband. And then in doing that, it would show that she
was biased,
and it all got investigated, and he was charged with 2 more felonies and 3 more misdemeanors, falsifying ID, campaign fraud, and whatever else. I'm not sure what it was, but that stuff I believe is still on the table. It just doesn't. What I didn't like what the judge kept saying was benefit to D'Angelo. He got the benefits and things.
Well, this is the criminal justice system and not the victim justice system.
Right. and he should not be able to gain anything. But this is where we're at, and
What do you
uh,
think about the fact that he was allowed to practice as an attorney all this time since his indictment in November of 2020? And mind you, he was a general practice attorney and represented many parents for custody litigation. And apparently, many of those parents were there were allegations of child abuse for the parents that he represented. And sometimes, oddly, children going into the custody of the abuser taken from the safe parent. What do you think about the fact he was allowed to represent parents in custody matters all this time?
oh, disgusting. I mean, did the parents know? They didn't. I don't think that anybody knew um, what he was getting prepared to go to trial for. He should have been never been able to practice. His license should have been taken away immediately.
I think a lot of people did try contacting the Bar Association, and the Bar Association kept saying, oh, that they couldn't do anything. But I also know that there are provisions that when something is a public health threat and imminently dangerous enough, they can temporarily suspend pending an investigation. So, do you feel that his practice rose to the level of being a public health threat, yet he was allowed to practice all this time?
Oh yes, yeah, no question.
Do
It,
you have much faith in our system when it comes to
no,
matters like this?
I've lost all faith in the justice system, all faith, and um, I, I, especially after today and the way this has been dragged out, um, and the way they made it sound like they had conferences between the people and D'Angelo's attorneys, not in front of the judge, but they had a lot of conversations and what could be thrown out, what needed to be added in. There's too much. There's too much there. Too much leeway in what they can do and throw out. I mean, when Judge Clark first took the case here, his last thing he did before he retired was threw out the unlawful imprisonment charge, which was a big one, and that would have been the 12th charge, I believe. It reduced it to 11.
So
But
you mentioned Caroline Wojtaszek is the person who got Nicholas D'Angelo his job with Niagara County CPS. And are you aware that Caroline Wojtaszek's son is godchild to Judge Richard Clark? Are you aware of that fact?
that I did not know. I
Yes.
did not know. Just finding that out now, but it doesn't surprise me. I would say, I mean, um, they've run the county for a long time out of North Tonawanda,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that stops them. They just continue doing things right, like it's another day.
And Caroline Wojtaszek used to be a special victims advocate for the Niagara County DA's office.
Right.
Now she's a judge, but she knowingly participated, apparently, in Nicholas D'Angelo's assignment as an attorney for Niagara County CPS with public knowledge that he's already a sex offender at the time he was hired.
Yep. Yep. She knew that. She liked people to believe different, I'm sure. Claude George is the one who suspended him after finding out, and I who knows how much he knew. He is the county attorney, and so they let him continue on until it got too thick.
Right. Yeah. They let him continue on until they were cornered to have to do something.
Right. And I'm afraid that the county, any county really, needs to have um, committees overwatching civil committees, basically people everyday people watching over what they're doing, because this stuff is going to continue happening. The one they put together for the Niagara County sheriffs and about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, got dismantled within the first 6 months. The governor was sending money out if they had would do this oversight committees, local, and it went well for maybe a couple sessions, and then it went bye bye. There was no more meetings, nothing. So that's how we lose touch of what's really happening out there.
There's always the adage, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And most people know that if you're a business owner, you have to be present or your business will fail.
Hmm.
So that's the issue that I take with our government is if the public isn't providing much oversight, isn't monitoring the actions of our government, if if we're just dependent on what the government can do for us, but we're not actually participating and monitoring and watching what's going on in our courts, seeing what CPS is doing, seeing what the judges are doing in the family courts, the government is going to act like the cat's away and the mice are going to play, and our government is going to fail to do its duties to the citizens for as long as we're not providing that oversight, just like any business owner needs to be present. That's why I started locally, well, throughout New York State, actually, court watching. And I want people to know that historically, um, most courts in New York State, specifically speaking, the family courts, would not allow people to come in and watch as the public, and they would cite bogus reasons such as confidentiality. And I want people to know that that's no longer the case. And New York State knows it. The chief judge knows it. The chief administrative judge knows it. Um, and in fact, they even have applications on newyorkcourts.gov to watch as virtual court watching. And the reason that the public is supposed to have access to family court cases is because it's a constitutional right, First Amendment, of public access to our courts. But also in New York State, it's also the law under the Uniform Rules of Family Court, Section 205.4. And if a judge ever tries to deny public access to a case, you cite your First Amendment rights and you cite the Uniform Rules of Family Court 205.4. They should not be denying you access. The actual, if you look up the Uniform Rules of Family Court, I believe it says that court watching to public citizens is limited to the number of seats in the courtroom. And certainly, I think it also says something along the lines, but people just have to look up themselves, that if you're a party to the case or a witness, there may be some exclusions like that. Or if any of the litigating parties object, the judge has to state a reasonable reason to send you out to the record and can't just send you out without a reason to the record. So look it up if you're interested in doing court watching. If there's anyone having a contentious family court situation, you should have the right of access. And if not, then you can email your chief administrative judge in your judicial district, or the judge, because they are very should be open to the public. We are having problems with virtual court watching, because when the Constitution was created, when these laws were created, there was no virtual access to the courts. With the rule being that access is limited to seating, in my opinion, virtual access makes seating unlimited. But it seems like they're starting to bend now that there's that application for virtual court watching on the newyorkcourts.gov too.
Well, there's hardly any seating. Actually, there's no room at all to sit.
Yeah, they'll probably
So,
make a half of a chair or
oh,
something.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to sit on each other's lap to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It should be open to the public, and as many that want to be there should be able to come in. Now, I mean, I was questioned today, like, what are you here for today? Well, I'm here in support. Do I
Yeah,
really have to say?
you're not even supposed to be asked, you're not even supposed to be asked your name.
Right. And I just, yeah, I'm in here for support. And another one is it doesn't just these cases alone. But even if you go into criminal court cases on a regular basis every morning, or anything to do with traffic, anything, just watch a little bit of what happens and who gets buddy with who.
You learn a lot.
And yeah, you do. And you see certain things going on that, you know, just it's terrible. It takes the trust out of anything. You don't trust anything. I recall a case back, oh heck, it had to be about 8 years ago with Niagara Falls mayor, Restino. He was a judge, and phones were prohibited inside the courthouse apparently, and a phone went off, and he got very aggravated, and he asked who the phone was. This was during criminal court, I guess, and because nobody would step up, he summoned everybody to jail. Everybody went to jail, and it turns out, my understanding is it was an attorney's phone that rang. So everybody went to jail, and I guess I just feel I don't mean to come off as a tough guy, but I'm glad I wasn't in that courtroom that day, because I I don't think I would have went too easy. I think people got to stand up more.
Well, that's
We're,
definitely, he definitely did get in trouble for abuse of powers of contempt,
yes,
and inappropriately so.
right. So yeah,
So,
it's
yeah, I agree. I think that people really need to start participating in our government more, in our courts. And I think right now, like you said, you've lost trust in the system. And a lot of people are questioning their news sources these days, what the media reports and doesn't report. How much do they report? Do we just get fed little crumbs? And what important things are left out that we're not being told. And if you're a truth seeker and you want to know what's going on in the world and happening around you, then the best thing to do is to go into the courts and start court watching, because then you're going to hear the real news.
well,
I can't tell you, even like the Niagara County, you and I were going back and forth about this, the forensics lab.
yeah, yeah,
When you read what was reported to the public by the media, oh, there's the forensics lab is a little under fire here, and then you go and you read the actual lawsuit. The director of the forensics lab is a sister
yeah.
of
Rob,
Senator Ort,
mhm,
and as punishment for whistleblowing, she put the female forensics lab technician,
yes,
as punishment, sentenced her office to the firearms room, which is all leaded walls.
yep,
Leaded walls on four sides plus the ceiling, and it was to isolate her and prevent her from talking to other employees.
mhm,
That's like, you're a whistleblower, so you're sent to the toxic dungeon.
right.
And no news or media reported that, but when you pulled up the case and you read that,
You can read between the lines, right?
so right, so the media doesn't report, so people really should be going into court and watching.
Hmm.
And again, this goes back to Noelle as well in all of her efforts, because I think this D'Angelo case, if he had a maximum potential of 45 years and he got 6 months, imagine if there wasn't ongoing reminders and just awareness to the public, how much more they would have swept that under the rug.
Oh yeah, that's what I told her today. I says, you brought this case to court as far as it came here. You have no control over what the district attorneys and his attorneys are talking about or doing, but you did. You brought this here,
Mm.
and so in that way, justice was served, but not nowhere near where it should have been. They find loopholes. They're lawyers. They're all lawyers there, so they know the loopholes. Let's give them 10 months probation, but we can only give them a maximum of 6 months in the county jail, no state time. So that's the loophole they found, And it's, I don't know. I don't know if my lawyer would ever find a loophole for me like that. I don't know. There's uh, there was a camera in the courtroom today, so the Buffalo News was able to take pictures, and so there's a lot of I'm sure there's a lot of pictures that are
Well,
out
that's
there.
wonderful. And I'm also a proponent of cameras in the courtroom, and I'm actually a proponent of video cameras in the courtroom
Yeah.
because again, when our Constitution was created, when our laws were created, it wasn't when there was the prevalence of uh, you know um, cameras, video cameras, right? And um, maybe there's cameras to capture a story is one thing, but for accuracy of what was said in the courtroom, cameras and video cameras and so forth, I think are very important because how many times does a stenographer say, stop, I can't hear you, stop, you're
Mhm.
talking too fast? How many times is a transcript inaccurate and materially inaccurate? And so that's a due process right to have an accurate record, um, and maybe susceptible to less tampering too.
Right. Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, um, I thought the same thing when I was in the courtroom today. I go, I don't know why we can't videotape in here because what are we hiding? What are we just don't want a, a larger lens out there
Right,
for everybody to see. Is
right.
that what it is?
And our government is supposed to be by the people for the people.
Yeah.
And I think, the New York State Constitution, if you look up under the articles, I forget which article, it might be Article 6, I'm not positive, but it's the public's right to know
Hmm.
what's going on. And these judges, despite how narcissistic they may be, if you dare have your cell phone go off in his court,
Hmm.
no matter how important they think they are, they're an employee and they're our employee.
Yes.
And if I was a judge and I was doing the right things, I would want my good adjudication all over, right?
Right. Right.
So, I mean, I can understand in some certain situations that maybe not, but generally, cameras should be allowed in the courtroom.
I agree. 100%. This way, everybody can see for themselves. There's a lot being said that might be missed. We can only count on the reporters to give us the facts, and if they miss something, you know, um, and even that, they're giving reporters a hard time in the courtrooms. I've noticed
Right,
about electronics and things like that, and I've actually seen the New York State Court police. I don't know exactly what you call them, but they got very um, upset at a reporter because he went over his head to bring in and go up and plug in his system, and the the officer that was there got all up in his face right in front of everybody and says, "How dare you go over my head?" I go, "Wow!" And it's like you you're in a courtroom and you're doing this in front of people. It's like this is our house, not your house, you know. And if it continues, if we keep letting this happen, they don't get checked. You can call their supervisors all you want. They won't do anything. It's got to change. It's just they're making it very so everybody's very afraid to be in a courtroom.
so whether you're religious or not, or whether you believe in the Bible or not, I think we all can agree that it's a historical document. And Luke 11 in the Bible says, woe ye lawyers and experts in law. So Jesus was not so happy with many lawyers. And Jesus' solution to the corruption in the courts was that which has been heard in dark rooms shall now be proclaimed from rooftops, and that which was whispered to ears in inner rooms shall now be heard in dark rooms, will be heard in daylight, something along those lines, right?
Hmm.
And Jesus then went out into the thousands of onlookers. which is the people.
Mhm.
So even in the Bible, court corruption has been, what are we, 2023 AD, right?
Mhm.
So court corruption has been a problem all this time. And in the Bible, Jesus's remedy was going to the people and the onlookers. So we are the solution to this problem. We have this responsibility. And so again, I really encourage the public to start paying attention. Go into these family court cases. We got the family courts open in all of New York State. Go in and watch these criminal court cases. If you don't trust what's out there in the media, if you don't trust what's being reported to you, go right to the source. And instead of sitting in your chair turning on Fox News or CNN, go straight to the courtroom, straight to the course, to the what's going on, and watch. And you can do it as a group of friends, as
Mhm.
your activity, and go out for coffee after and
Sure.
discuss the case, and you're going to know more about the truth. Now, what happens in the courtrooms and what's brought before the judge isn't always exactly the situation either, but at least it's not filtered through so many processes once you get to the media and what is reported to the public.
Right. I agree. Unfortunately, there's only a handful that really want to speak up, like I found in this case, the D'Angelo case. We have a small network, but you mentioned it to some other people, different things. Not they couldn't be bothered, but I just don't think that they wanted to get involved. You know what I mean? They didn't want to
Well,
get close to it.
to that, I say, look at you. You're sitting cozy in your couch. You don't look like you're sweating to me,
No.
and you're discussing some pretty,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're doing okay. And I'm pretty sure I'll see you some other time.
Yes. You know it. You know it. I'll be around.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right. And in fact, in some ways, speaking up makes you safer, because if you're quiet, then nobody's going to know why anyone did anything to you.
Yes.
When you have your presence among thousands of onlookers, if something happens to you, people will know and be, nervous about what happened there.
Yep.
So, um, speaking up isn't so necessarily unsafe. Sometimes it's the safer thing to do.
Right. Without a doubt. I've told people this all the time. You speak up, you're protected.
Right.
And
And
they'll.
and especially if people really break past this whole nuance in fear, if more and more people do that, and then you have 50,000 people speaking up, you're really safe. So not
Yeah.
only do you help yourself, but you're helping many other people to come forward too once you come forward yourself. And that comes back to the Nicholas D'Angelo case too, because, rumor on the streets and people talking and so forth, it seems like there's probably a lot more victims out there who are hesitant to come forward. And really, it's beneficial for them and everybody else if they do.
Well, like I say, just his picture being in the paper now, the photographer took a lot of pictures. It could jolt somebody's memory and say, wait a minute, that's the attorney I saw, or that's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll come forward. Uh, and I'm hoping that's not what the judge meant by, or what the district attorney meant by cases coming forward cannot be prosecuted. But somebody might new come up and say, "Hey, this is the person here," and maybe
I
new
don't think
cases
that
will
an
come
I
forward.
don't think I don't think a judge could prejudice other people's cases in their rights. So I'm hoping what the judgment is that basically that which is litigated or could have been litigated is now over. Um, Again, that goes back to me to make me upset about the whole. I think this was some child sex trafficking here, and he never got charged for that federal crime.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't. He basically slipped through the.
And it appears to have been during his official capacity as a Niagara County
Mhm,
CPS attorney.
mhm,
So there's a lot of motive to why they would want to have a plea deal and cover that up.
right. They wanted to put it to bed.
Right.
Trial would have brought a lot more out, and that's why it's done. It's been done this way. He not only gets, I hate to say it, the benefit but it stops any more bleeding of any wrongdoings.
It's also troubling to me because it seems to me if an individual was hired to work for CPS, being a sex offender when he was hired,
Mm-hmm.
and then you find out that there was a 16-year-old in DSS custody that he offended on. And again, it's apparently the child was in CPS custody because that never came out in trial. You should think that there should be an investigation on every single child case he was ever involved with, even CPS and not CPS, because he was doing custody cases as well.
Yeah.
And the dispositions of all these cases, I think, really needs to be looked into, because I personally know some cases where he was involved and children went from the custody of the safe parent to the alleged sexual offending parent.
Yeah.
In fact, he was involved in my own case where there were similar allegations and problems. So, not just my case, but many others, these all need to be scrubbed head to toe, look at the disposition, and why were children going to custody of alleged perpetrators when he was involved.
Yep. I agree.
And I don't think that I see any evidence of that happening to date. Sometimes they do investigations and we don't know what's going on, but I don't seem to see any hint of an investigation going on looking at the dispositions of the cases where he was involved with in any capacity.
He preyed on vulnerable people, whether it be his private law or the children in CPS.
Well, sure. I mean, just they didn't even have to be vulnerable people. Just the fact that he was an attorney gave him a position to exploit almost anybody.
Right. Right. They're looking to him for guidance, and he broke that trust. And a lot of the times when they left the office, they didn't realize what had happened, and then it comes to him. And he never should have been in social services to begin with. And he was a young attorney. He had a lot of knowledge on networking, and they took him under his wing. And what his connection is, I don't know for sure, but he wrote for the Niagara Reporter, and that was a free publication out there. And he wrote for politicians. He worked on campaigns, and they knew full well what he was doing. Morinello, Assemblyman Morinello,
Right.
is the one who first had his case when he was in high school. Whatever. Yeah. So they knew all along here, and now it's all caught up.
I was going back and forth in my mind whether or not to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up because I care about people's safety in the area. While we all giggled, it's still a problem. It's a serious problem. His picture came up on Grindr, and he was wearing apparently women's lingerie.
Yeah.
And in his indictment transcript, this whole kidnapping thing and so forth, it seems that he was going on these apps and then raping people in his car. So I just want people to be safe and be careful on these apps because he has been on there. I don't know if he's going to continue to do that, but if it's a compulsion, you got to be careful.
Let's hope that he seeks medical attention, because that is something that's in him, and he needs help. And if he seeks that, maybe he can get that under control. But letting him off and giving him support is not doing any justice at all.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they say that domestic violence, that mental health treatment never improves domestic violence. The way to improve domestic violence rates is to actually hold people accountable.
Right.
So here they just gave him almost the comparable to inaction to certain behaviors is the same as condoning it. So almost 6 months is really hinging on condoning his behavior because he got such a little slap on the wrist and he can go back and do whatever again. I mean, he already went back and did whatever again the first time. This is his second time.
This sets precedent. Besides, other lawyers can use this case as a reference, template plate to say, hey, this is what happened in this case. Then I want my client to have the same loophole.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that people don't realize how dangerous it is when I am actually surprised the judge didn't say, oh, time out here. No, 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 no. If you were there, I was there for the whole thing. And when you heard it all, you saw people actually cringing in there, even some of the officers that were in there.
I don't think you
And
could be a normal human being and not cringe. I mean, they were
right.
talking about forced oral sex on a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Yep. And they for the lawyer or the judge not to say no, 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 no. We're going to do something more with this case. This isn't just going to be played out like this. I think she had the right to say no, no. There's more to this. There was so much there, so much. We have people serving time and probation for 10 years for a lot less. There's a lot out there, and think about the forensic lab. Look at how many people are sitting in jail right now because of bad samples.
Right. And again, if you went to the lawsuit and you read the actual lawsuit, it describes in there that Senator Ort's sister put paper up over the glass to her office so nobody could see who was coming in to present evidence.
Right.
And this was hinting that evidence was being received improperly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes you wonder if they were rigging cases.
Right. Yeah. Well, what they're doing right now, I mean, if you watch the news, Ort and Felicetti are on TV talking about the animals. It basically, so nobody's talking about the forensic lab.
Right.
Because they're both connected. So let's talk about the animals being stolen. Let's talk about that stuff. Be on the lookout. It's all just a smokescreen.
Yeah. Well, Bill, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
If you have anything that you'd like to say to the public, the people that are watching, any ideas, we talked about, court watching and people becoming more involved in our government. Any other solutions, in your opinion, to improve situations like this and outcomes that we think are unjust?
I want to just bring something out to people's attention. There's, since the marijuana being passed, and police are pulling over people, maybe for crossing a fog line or a yellow line. I just want to bring something up here that's different. Now, they blow a 000, nothing, no alcohol, but their eyes might be a little glossy. They might be on some type of a prescribed narcotic, right? They arrest these people, and they take their cars, get them towed. Now they have their license taken away because they're simply on a prescribed medicine. And we have to find out how the law really is there, with drawing blood, with breathalyzer, with all that stuff. And I don't think it's clear. And hey, I don't condone drinking and driving, but we have to use our head on the side of the road. I know of a situation where this young lady just went in hysterics. She never got pulled over before, and she was out doing her extra job. She works at ECMC. She does her extra job delivering meals to Uber Eats or whatever. Well, she looked down for a second to check an address while she crossed the fog line at midnight. She got pulled over. She was going to her next delivery, and they pulled her out of the car. Really, really did a number on her as far as questioning this, and this. Took her down to the jail. Another 3 hours at the jail. She spent overnight until the judge could see her the next morning, and they don't have anything on her.
So one, this doesn't really help the situation overall. Um, but I am a healthcare provider myself. And I used to look at those people that had the license plates that say MD, RN, PA, and I used to think, please. But now I see a whole purpose to that, because if you're a provider and you work the night shift and you're coming home at 2 and 3 in the morning, you get pulled over all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that instance, you know what? Maybe people who work in the healthcare field need to start doing that, because I got pulled over a few times and it was always the same spot. So I feel like this was all intentional, not like they were, singling me out, but that they sat there every night and they pulled over pretty much anyone that went by.
Right.
Because I was like, how could I have been speeding or anything? Because I have to turn like in just a few feet. So I doubt that I was really speeding. And so, and in what you described, where, then they make allegations, well, your eyes were glassy, you know, they postpone court hearings, all the interim before you prove yourself to be innocent can cause so much damage. You could lose your job if you can't drive in that time that they accused you of having drugs in your car.
Yeah.
So but just for healthcare professionals, I've seen that situation. It's happened to me. I never went and got the specialized license plates, but that's just because I just haven't taken the time to do it. But now I see the reason, because you do get pulled over when you're working the night. They think you've been out drinking, but really you were taking care of people and the community, and you were
Right.
probably taking care of other people who were drinking.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. It's
Um,
just it's a gray area. That's all, and it's costing people a lot that
yeah,
are wrongfully accused, I think, in
yeah.
cases. And then they have to, you're dishing money out for attorneys, and they've done nothing wrong. And then it ends up being the way it is. And I think they need to really figure out a way to fix this situation for sure. A lot of cases I've heard just recently, and the a town attorney got arrested. Okay, did he spend the night in jail? I would guess not. I would guess not. He gave no blood, no breathalyzer. Did he lose his license immediately? I would probably, I venture to say no. So the special treatment's got to stop too,
Right.
you know? So that's all I wanted to say about that, and bring some light to that too.
Thank you.
A lot of families are messed up because of that, if they've done nothing wrong,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
or CPS might even take your kids away when really
Right.
you're just going to and from work.
Good point. Good point. There you go.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
so much, Bill. It's wonderful talking with you.
Yeah.
And, I pray for better days for everyone. And
Yeah.
thank you for your courage in speaking up and showing people how easy it actually can be done right from your own living room.
Yeah.
No sweat, no fear. It is
No,
okay to speak up and come forward.
I can sleep tonight.
Right.
All right. You take care. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.